What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton could have discovered Ferrari's biggest hidden flaw in the last 10 years? A failure so profound that it exposed the entire team, from the engineers to Fred Vasseur. What exactly did Hamilton say that froze Leclerc and left the team boss speechless? The Abu Dhabi weekend began like so many others for Ferrari in 2025, with cautious speeches, moderate expectations, and an internal feeling of competitive resignation. The championship had already been decided, the development of the SF25 had been frozen for months, and the team was working more out of inertia than ambition. However, no one imagined that last Grand Prix was going to become the most important breaking point of the entire season, nor that Lewis Hamilton was going to uncover a problem that had been hidden since the beginning of the year. During free practice, Hamilton was running on a seemingly normal program. I wasn't looking for the limit, I wasn't forcing a heroic turn, I was just accumulating data. But in FP3, in one of the fast corners at Yas Marina, the car suddenly stopped responding. There was no progressive warning, no gradual loss of grip. The SF25 went from stable to completely unbalanced in a matter of tenths. Hamilton lost control and ended up against the barriers. The impact was not particularly violent, but it was clear enough to set off all the alarms. The immediate reaction on the radio was what changed everything. Hamilton did not speak of his own error, he did not blame the conditions or the tires. It was direct and clinical. He explained that something in the car had bent at the front and that it caused a chain reaction at the rear. It was not a phrase thrown into the air. It was a precise technical description, unbecoming of someone who had just had an accident. At that time, many within the team did not give it much importance. They thought it was an exaggerated perception, a product of the blow and the accumulated frustration of the entire season. But when the car returned to the garage and they began analyzing the telemetry, the narrative changed completely. The data showed something that didn't fit any known pattern. In sustained high-speed cornering, when the car remained under lateral loading for more than 2 seconds, the structural behavior of the chassis changed. It was not a conventional aerodynamic problem, nor poor height management, nor incorrect setup. It was something much more serious, a loss of structural rigidity in a critical area of the monocoque, right at the intersection with the front suspension. This defect caused an abnormal bending of the chassis, altering the aerodynamic flow under the car. The ground stopped working as designed, the front axle lost support, and the general balance was broken without warning. In simple terms, the car broke down dynamically in the most demanding situations. And the most alarming thing of all was that this failure did not appear in simulations, it was not detected in the wind tunnel or in static tests. It only manifested itself in real track conditions, when the car was pushed to the limit for several consecutive seconds. Hamilton understood the magnitude of the problem before anyone else. Not only because the data confirmed it, but because I had felt it throughout the season. Those corner entries where the car seemed unpredictable, those moments in which confidence disappeared without explanation, those scares that forced you to correct with reflexes more typical of survival than precise driving. Everything made sense. The SF25 wasn't simply difficult to drive. It was structurally compromised. From that moment on, the accident stopped being an isolated incident and became a devastating revelation. Ferrari had competed all season with a defective car without knowing it, or worse still, without wanting to listen to those who warned about it. Because Hamilton wasn't the first to feel it. Charles Leclerc had been describing similar sensations for months, especially in fast corners, but his comments had been minimized, filed as adaptation problems or excess sensitivity at the wheel. The difference is that now there was no possible interpretation. The data backed up exactly what Hamilton had said over the hot radio. And that is where the conflict reaches its true critical point. This was not just a technical failure, but a systemic failure within Ferrari. A problem of internal culture, of communication, of active listening to the pilots. Hamilton, with his experience and his authority, had put words and evidence to something that had been swept under the rug for too long. That moment marked a before and after. It was no longer just the end of a bad season. It was the public exposure of a structure that was not functioning as it should. And in silence, without grandiose statements, Lewis Hamilton made it clear that what happened in Abu Dhabi could never be repeated. Because if Ferrari wanted to aspire to something in 2026, it first had to accept an uncomfortable truth. The problem was not in the drivers, it was in the very basis of the project. The discovery of the structural failure of the SF25 was like a silent bomb that exploded in the center of the Ferrari pit. There were no screams. There were no heated discussions in front of the cameras. But internally, the effect was devastating. And in the midst of that emotional earthquake, the two men most directly impacted were Charles Leclerc and Fred Vasseur. One, the driver who had been discredited throughout the season for his feelings behind the wheel. The other, the leader of a project who, in trying to build the future, forgot to attend to the present. For Charles Leclerc, the revelation brought no comfort. It wasn't a satisfied, "I told you so." It was an open wound, a painful validation. Because for months I had felt something strange in the car. A sudden loss of confidence at key moments. That feeling that something didn't quite fit when you needed precision the most. His driving style, so dependent on the stability of the front axle, was betrayed by a car that collapsed without warning. And every time he said it, they responded with technicalities, with data that supposedly contradicted him. Now he knew the truth, and with it came the questions that hurt the most. How many times have you been held responsible for mistakes that were actually a direct consequence of an invisible failure? How many points did you lose not because of excess aggressiveness or lack of concentration, but because the car was poorly designed from its basic structure? How many team strategic decisions were made based on the erroneous assumption that the driver was at the limit, when in reality it was the car that was giving no more? Leclerc did not say it publicly, but his body language in the following days expressed it all. Contained frustration, disappointment with his loved ones, and a feeling of deep loneliness. He had been silently screaming all season. Nobody listened. Or worse, they chose not to listen. Fred Vasseur, meanwhile, had to face the worst kind of leadership, public introspection. The Ferrari director had bet everything on the long term. In April, when the SF25 showed its first inconsistencies, he made a radical decision. Stop all development of the current car and pour resources into the 2026 project. A bet that, strategically, made sense in the face of the regulatory change. But, morally, it left its drivers exposed for more than 15 Grand Prix aboard a car that would never be corrected. Vasseur acknowledged his mistake, but he did so when it was too late. He admitted that Leclerc had been complaining about everything for a decade, but that this time, his frustration was completely justified. He said he would prefer his pilots to destroy him with criticism rather than congratulate him for something that doesn't work. A statement with good intentions, but one that comes a year late. Now the pressure on Maranello is total, because the promise of 2026 can no longer have flaws. There is no room for second chances. The car that Ferrari presents for the new era of Formula One will be examined under the most critical lens of all, that of its own past mistakes. If the internal culture that allowed pilots' warnings to be ignored remains intact, neither the most efficient aerodynamics nor the most powerful engine will be able to save them. Lewis Hamilton was clear after the accident. Although his words were not leaked publicly, those who were present assured that his message was more political than technical. He talked about the car, yes, but above all he talked about mentality. How modern Formula One requires adaptability, active listening, and engineering humility. How a structure that ignores the direct experience of its pilots is doomed to failure, no matter how much talent it accumulates in its facilities. And that is the biggest lesson Ferrari must absorb, that technical excellence does not compensate for human disconnection. That simulators, wind tunnels, and performance graphs are worth less than a pilot who can translate sensations into performance. Because that's what great teams do. They don't dominate because they have better data. They dominate because they know how to interpret them based on what happens on the court. And if the driver says the car is unstable, you don't contradict him with a spreadsheet. It is investigated. It is validated. You act. For Leclerc, 2026 is also an emotional breaking point. He has been loyal. He has believed. He has endured years of frustration and responded with talent. But that loyalty has a limit. And if Ferrari fails again, the Monegasque driver could rethink his future. Not out of spite, but out of professional necessity. A talent like his cannot continue to be wasted on a team that does not listen. And for Hamilton, the challenge is twofold. He didn't come to Ferrari to say goodbye. He came to show that he can still win. And if that car isn't up to par with what you need, no one can say for sure how long your patience will last. Their experience, their demand, their competitive standard can become Ferrari's most powerful weapon, or its most painful reflection of what they have not known how to be. Therefore, the 2026 season will be more than just a new page in the history of the Scuderia. It will be a trial, a verdict on whether Ferrari is capable of truly changing. If it can abandon its tradition of secretive pride to embrace a modern, collaborative culture, focused on pilots at the center of technical development. Because next season will not just be a competition between cars. It will be a competition of philosophies. And Ferrari, after so many mistakes, can no longer afford to have the wrong one. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.